Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury Interviews. Today we have Will Gillespie, and he's a longtime classic player, singer, songwriter. I used to watch him at the Townhouse, and he has at least 21 albums recorded in the studio, possibly more. He says he lost count, so I counted the albums on his Bandcamp, and there's at least 21 there. Before we begin, you can find us on Suds Town and join the conversation. If you would like to be a guest on the show, please reach out. Hey, Will, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Nice to talk to you. How are you doing?
Very well, and thank you for coming on. I know your name. I mean, I used to watch you probably 20 years ago at the Townhouse when I turned 19, 20, and your voice was always so. You know what I like most about it? It always calmed me down. It was calm, and I loved it. I love it because of that. So
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's good. It's great to talk to you. It's like a little bit of a homecoming. Bring back some memories of those great times at the Towner.
So
Yeah.
tell us about how you started out in music. This is always the first question because just to give our listeners a little bit of a perspective of how it started for you.
Oh, sure. Well, if we go way, way back, the first recording I ever did was side by side with my paternal grandmother at the piano. We did a little home recording, and it was actually the song Side by Side. And I was like 4 years old and singing some old show tunes. But then, as a professional, it was probably around 2001 when I moved to Sudbury at first and did my first big gig there was at the Lions Club Christmas Telethon because I had just recently kind of dropped out of theater school to become a full-time folk singer and there saw an ad for the Christmas Telethon and I was living in Timmins at the time and I came in to audition and then from there my dad had a friend who lived in Sudbury, and while I was there to do the audition for the telethon, he brought me around to all the bars in town. And at the time, there was a place called Tin Pan Alley, and I booked some shows there. And then, uh, so this was the early 2000s, just coming off the 90s, and I went into the townhouse, and there was Paul Lowenberg and Richard the Bouncer and Brian McNally, who's a bass player there, and myself. We all had ponytails and goatees at the time. They were just sitting around. And yeah, then I started playing the townhouse and living in Timmins and coming into Sudbury for gigs, playing the scene. And then as the months went on, I just stayed longer and longer as I got busier and busier. And before I knew it, I lived there. And that's sort of how I became a professional musician. After years of being self-taught and learning by doing and picking up things from the people I was gigging with.
Well, it's very iconic though that era of the Townhouse for sure, with Richard working the door and the old calendars with the black and white uh, booklet printed out. Your name was
Oh yeah.
always on there. I mean, I remember it clearly. So yeah.
Well, that was a point of pride for me at the time, that I I I managed to, have it both ways. I got to keep my last name, because a lot of people would be on the calendar and it would just be like, Matt or Paul or usually those would be a guy before the days of like now, I guess people doing covers might have tablets. Back in those days, it was a binder, so people would have a binder just full of every song they knew, kind of thing. And so, but I would always try to like memorize everything I played and usually do original music. So I managed to keep my name Will Gillespie, and it was a major point of pride for me. The goal, it was like the Rolling Stone within the local scene to make it to the cover of the townhouse calendar, and I was amazed and moved, the day that my, local acoustic original band, made it to the cover and got to play a Saturday night at the townhouse. So,
And you mentioned something in our pre-talk about you were constantly bringing in more material, or there was some kind of requirement back then for at the townhouse.
oh yeah, well, you see, I think at the time it was a beautiful era of the capital of Bohemia, where yeah, in at the townhouse, they pretty much always like 364 days a year had live music on the stage, and it was almost always pretty much exclusively original. So I would be playing these 4 hour sets and coming in once a month at least, and I'd want to do like the whole night's worth of my own original tunes that had to keep up with the covers that other people were doing in other bars around town, and so you had to write, yeah, like 4 hours worth of catchy original material, because that's the place where everybody came through on tour and that kind of thing. And yeah, it was great. Sunday through Thursday was locals, and then the weekends was usually touring bands. So yeah, I got to open for a lot of different people, and even one time I picked up a last minute fill-in gig with a touring reggae band, which is weird because I'm sort of known as like a finger picking folk guy. And luckily enough, they had a 2 night stand. So in the first night, I played in the style of Will Gillespie, the sort of jazzy folk music, finger picking, and then the second night, the lead singer told me like how to do reggae. Just very very
Reggae.
straightforward. Yeah, just like just yeah, you do lead or rhythm, you do just the chords, just the melody. That's it. Just like, oh wow, because I was used to playing solo and trying to be a one man band all with my right hand, kind of thing. So having to you know learn a different style and simplify everything and just play one piece of a section, one section of the whole. So that was cool. Those were great days, and it was Jesse and Laurie over at Innovative Guitar Ideas used to get me a lot of interesting gigs in those days too. I remember one time my band, the Saltcoats, we got to do the Homeschoolers Hoedown uh, out in the valley, and yeah, they had a greased pig contest. So there was like this like piglet running around like greased up, and the kids were trying to catch it, and that was and we were supposed to play a barn dance there, and we wound up playing outdoors instead, but it was really great. And we had like a banjo player, Marco Donato, and anyway, Chris Swain was in that band, and yeah, that was really good. Sort of like country folk outfit, and but then Josh Turnbull played jazz drums and trumpet in that band. So it was neat. It was like part jazz, part country, and yeah, we got to do the judge the pie making contest. So we got to taste all the pies the kids made, and that's the kind of thing I love about being like a troubadour. Is you get into these interesting situations sometimes.
You know what's a great thing about you, Will, is that you've stayed true to your folk roots, and even way back then. And nowadays, you're seeing artists like, for example, Taylor Swift. She jumps from the country to the pop, and they're kind of cross marketing themselves. But you've always stayed into folk. So, what is it about folk that draws you in, that makes you that you really are the image of folk music, in my opinion?
Oh, thanks. Well, I think it's partly where I'm from. Growing up in South Porcupine, Northern Ontario, spending a lot of time alone in or sort of communing with nature and like looking at the sky, and just spending a lot of time playing acoustic guitar. I think that's partly what made that happen was just the instrument at hand. Because when I first started out at the early days in the townhouse, I used to play a lot of shows. The first few years, I would play piano half the time, um, because like I was living back at my folks' place, and they had an acoustic apartment-sized piano, and so sometimes I'd noodle on that, and I'd write sort of these jazzy songs on that, and listening to a lot of Tom Waits, which was another big influence living in Sudbury at the time. And for years after, whenever I'd come back to Sudbury to play a show, I'd like listen to like Rain Dogs or Tom Waits' early years or whatever, getting there, because like we did the tribute show in December on Tom Waits' birthday, and I don't know, that music was a big part of the scene at the time, as far as covers and influences and records you listen to. So anyway, at the time I was doing almost half and half piano and guitar, but then spending a couple of years kind of couch surfing or living on the Greyhound, going from town to town, all that sort of thing, just traveling with like just an acoustic guitar is a big part of how I became such a uh, folk focused player. Was just and also when you're staying at other people's places, you can't plug in a electric, and I didn't have a drummer to play with to be loud. Anyway, yeah, like I like rocking out sometimes, but yeah, like I always return to the roots, music roots. And I think, yeah, it's sort of like there's kind of like the sound of Canada that, that there's like a rhythm that's kind of like this walking rhythm that's sort of common with a lot of folk rock, a lot of which came out of Canada, like the Neil Young and the band, and even to some degree Blue Rodeo has it, and that's kind of, I don't know, to me that's kind of like the
Hmm.
sound of like, you know, Starry Sky by a lake, and then sort of it's just kind of it's in your, it's what's going through your head as you're going through the day, I guess.
What a beautiful picture. I love that. So, I asked you how many albums and you didn't know, but how many songs do you think you've written?
Oh, if not not quite as many as you would think, but yeah, probably like a few hundred over
Wow.
the years. Yeah, because like, there was a time when I was at my most prolific where, as I said, I'd be living in Timmins and then coming into Sudbury and I'd trying to do at least, a few new songs every month when I come back and that sort of thing. And then in the last few years, I've written a lot of songs, but I don't really play them in my live set because for a few years in there, I was in Hamilton and I kind of switched over to doing musical theater for a few years there, where I had a theater company called Chasing Shadows Productions, and we would do like original musicals. And the first one was like in the style of a 1960s Elvis movie called, still again, there's the Canadian roots. It's called Swingin' in St. John's. It was like Elvis goes to another island paradise, this time, um, Newfoundland, and so you know, getting that opportunity, like it's funny, like it was through going away to go to drama school led me to become a folk singer, and then through being a folk singing troubadour in Hamilton led me back into the theater world, and I found this way of like sort of doing uh, my two kind of talents or passions or whatever at the same time, the music and the theater, and in this case, it was like right, yeah. So that one was written like in the style of an Elvis movie, and also borrowing from Newfoundland, East Coast, Celtic-inspired folk. But the way those early '60s uh, Elvis beach movies, sort of had that kind of style where, like, if it was like in Fun in Acapulco, they borrowed from a bunch of you know Mexican style music, and when it was in Las Vegas, there was a bit more sort of like showgirl, floor show kind of music, and so anyway, so that was the first of the musicals, and then from there, I did one in the style of Neil Diamond. It was like a Prince and the Pauper kind of thing where I play Neil Diamond and wrote songs in several of the styles that he's known for, and but it was like new original music, and the idea was, he gets amnesia, and then he winds up playing at this dive bar in downtown Hamilton, and anyway, and that was based again on my own experience from traveling around Ontario mostly, and being like a troubadour playing like dive bars and places like that, and it's all about how the regulars at the dive bar, there was when the big threat to the world, or my world at the time, was gentrification. So, but anyway, so yeah, that was that one, and yeah, we were very lucky. We got the Audience Choice Award at the Hamilton Fringe Festival that year, and so that was very validating and a great experience with the cast, and sort of a way, I just sort of adapted and pivoted and found another way to write songs and entertain people, and make them feel things through my words and music, and then from there, that led after 5 or 7 years of being a playwright and doing the Chasing Shadows Productions fringe theater thing. Then I debuted Mine, True Stories and Legends of the Porcupine Gold Rush, which was sort of my bridge back into being folk singer Will Gillespie primarily. So there we go. There's the journey that got me sort of back to. No, that's the part you missed. Was I was in Hamilton doing theater for a few years, but still writing songs, and that's also what happened to the why. If it seems like there's a couple years of I didn't have that, as many albums and singles as a folk singer. That, well, it's because I was doing cast albums at the time.
And you guys are coming on tour soon, from what I see on your Facebook here. Two Northern Troubadours.
Yes, well, the a really neat thing happened. I was at the Folk Music Ontario conference uh, year before last, and I met this guy, Brian Tremblay, and he's another singer-songwriter out of Sault Ste. Marie. And I met him there at the conference, and we were talking and trying to figure out a way to work together. And then I was excited to hear that he too was about to release a Northern Ontario history themed concept album. So he and I both came out with separate Northern Ontario history themed concept albums. Mine is Mine True Stories and Legends of the Porcupine Gold Rush, which was a fringe show that, I developed into a concept album with a band and everything like that. And then all written in old-timey styles from the period of the Porcupine Gold Rush, which was 1909. So there's a bit of bluegrass, and there's ragtime, and there's concert hall and waltzes, and a little bit of polka, and um, you know barrel house blues, and early proto swing, and styles like that, and it's all on acoustic instruments that people may have had. The idea was to do it as what I call a campfire cabaret, where it's like a storytelling folk musical where I'm like kind of in character and in costume and doing styles of the time, telling stories of the the lesser known people behind the legends of the Porcupine Gold Rush of 1909. So it's like the Timmins history, Northern Ontario history. It was like another Klondike, another Wild West that happened right here in Ontario up north in the Porcupine Camp in what became Timmins, where I'm from. And on the way, there's some other stories and songs about people from the Cobalt Silver Rush and the Kirkland Lake Gold Rush. And what's neat is one of the places we're playing, the museum up in Kirkland Lake, the Northern Ontario, the Museum of Northern History in Kirkland Lake actually was the Sir Harry Oakes Chateau. So I've got a song about Harry Oakes when he was a prospector who discovered, one of the big gold bonanzas that sort of made, put that town on the map. Um, we're actually doing the show in his house, and that's the same show that Brian Tremblay and I are bringing to Knox Hall in Sudbury on October 4th, which is I chose that on purpose because, Sudbury Saturday night, woohoo, you know, and so I always try to play in Sudbury on Saturday if I can, because the townhouse, that's where that song was written and all that stuff, and it's like the national anthem in Sudbury. So I'm gonna bring Brian Tremblay there, and he's gonna open the show, and he's gonna do the like 12 songs from his album about the ACR, the Algoma Central Railway, and other train songs based around his growing up in Sault Ste. Marie and his family connections there. And then so it's roots music about our roots, right? And we're playing in each other's hometowns, like we're going from the Ermatinger Clerg National Historic Site in up in Sault Ste. Marie all the way to the Timmins Museum. We're doing the show there. So I've done different versions of the Mine show up at the Timmins Museum. I even brought John from Murder Murder. He wound up playing mandolin and upright bass on that tour when I brought him to Timmins and Cobalt and Cochrane a couple of years ago. But this time it's me and Brian Tremblay, and then Lynn Eckroth is going to be singing harmonies and playing percussion with Brian during his set, and then uh, uh, we got Susan Robinson is like a visual artist, and she's painted a lot of Northern Ontario landscape paintings. So to make it feel theatrical, we're going to
Wow.
project those behind us, so it sort of feels like an old timey, like a play uh, painted backdrop, but it's going to be a projection. And then on top of that, the Timmins Museum has given us access to a bunch of historical photos of the real people I'm singing about.
Wow.
So when I'm singing about Johnny Jones and his sled dogs, you'll see a photo of Johnny Jones. And when I sing about Caroline Mabon Flower, the lady prospector of the Porcupine, and you'll see pictures of her out there, with her fancy dresses and her pistol and anyway, and her sled dog and all that sort of stuff. So, and now with this tour, the Elk Lake Museum. There was Terry is the name of the guy who runs that museum, and he actually sent me a couple books about this fella named Jack Monroe, and just last night I finished yet another song that's going to be in the show,
Wow.
and it's going to be about Jack Monroe, who was like a World War One veteran, a best-selling author, a boxing champion. His dog was the basis of the book and movie Lassie, and
Wow.
somehow he was like a major character that even doing all those years of performing and the research up at the Timmins Museum somehow slipped through. But now, thanks to that, all this traveling, yeah, it's like an evolving show. People come up to us afterwards from the audience, and yeah, one photo that we're projecting was like one of the audience members. It was their grandfather worked in the gold mines at Timmins in the 30s, so he's up there on the screen. So yeah, it's like a ever evolving show, and that's what we're bringing to Sudbury, to Knox Hall. Yeah, so it's going to be like a big homecoming on multiple levels for us, and yeah.
It feels sort of like I'm speaking with a living, breathing encyclopedia because of your knowledge is extensive of all of this. And on your poster, the same one, the same show, it says Capriol. Are you playing in Capriol?
Yes, we're doing so it's the one exception because the rest of the tour is all going to be like a 3 hour concert with like the full, both of us playing our full albums, and they all start at 7 p.m. But the
Right.
show in Capriol is going to be like an express, so again, using the train language, we're going to do sort of like a super, like the show's family friendly the whole time, but in Capriol we're going to do like an express, sort of a bit more geared towards kids, shorter daytime matinee at the train museum in Capriol. As soon as I discovered the train museum, like, oh, I really want to do the mine show here. And then we wound up working with Brian Tremblay, who's doing like a whole album of train songs. So we're like, okay, well, we
Hmm.
got to do it here. And then I think in Capriol, they're doing at the main train museum, they're doing like a Halloween activity, even that early, like the 5th of October. And so while they're doing all their spooky events for kids there, if people go over to the Heritage Center, just about like a block away, a short walk away from the main train museum, we'll be upstairs in there doing like a shorter, sort of abridged version of the show. Just cheap. And again, because most of the shows on this tour are official part of Culture Days, most of the performances are pay what you may, so people can
Hmm.
decide
Huh.
what they can afford to give. So that's our sort of free Sudbury show, the Knox
Right.
Hall show, because we're renting it. We're doing a ticketed show, so but that's sort of our biggest event of the whole tour. So
So the pay what you may is the Capriol show.
that's, yeah, it's the Capriol show, and then all the museum shows,
Right.
which is in 11 towns in 11 days, the first 11 days of October.
11,
So that's
11.
Yeah, it's gonna be a whirlwind there.
It seems like a significant number for some reason.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then yeah, that day actually that we're doing Capriol, so it's like after Knox Hall, we do Capriol, quick little matinee for the kids, and then we go over to Shoe Swap on the Nipissing, that resort that Paul Lowenberg himself is running now. He does
Wow.
concerts there occasionally, so we're doing like a house concert there. And yeah, it's a beautiful spot to spend a couple days. So we're gonna do like a house concert there at Shoe Swap on the Nipissing. It's a very popular place for people fishing, and in the winter you could bring your sled there. But anyway, it's like this beautiful sort of, yeah. All the cabins are kind of Bavarian style, and so yeah, it's going to be kind of idyllic, and a good way to break up the show. And then the second half of the tour, which is sort of like the Lake Temiskaming route, So then what's exciting for me is like then after that we're kind of following the path of the TNNO, or Temiskaming and Northern Ontario Railway, that was the path that they took up to the Porcupine Gold Rush back in 1909. So like we'll be kind of in a car, but like taking the same route, going to the same places where all these people were singing about did their thing. which is pretty exciting.
The next question, Will, is the daily segment, and that's a really odd name for it, but it's a question I ask every guest. And I have to mention now that you are not currently living in Sudbury, but you have lived here. And where are you living now?
Right now, yeah, we moved down south. We moved over to Oshawa. That's where,
Okay.
yeah, because my partner Susan, her family, we had to,
Yeah.
help take care of the family and that sort of thing. So now we're working with the theater on the Ridge largely in this region. So we're still doing like folk music and theater, but helping them out. And anyway,
Right. So you
but
can answer this question to the best of your ability, even with your memories and whatnot. You've spent a lot of time in Sudbury, and that's where I first saw you. So the question is, what is one thing that you feel would make Sudbury greater?
ooh, what would make the greater city of Sudbury even greater? Let's see. Well, for one thing, I like what you're doing here, like more promotion for the local music scene. And what made it great at the time that I lived there again was the scene we had uh, in especially the townhouse, but all around. Once they started doing that up here festival, and then there was also that. Yeah, I played it a couple times. The River and Sky was great because it was like the whole Sudbury music scene went camping together. It was awesome, and even people here in Oshawa end up going up there. So I think what would make Sudbury even greater is, in a way, kind of more of the same, more community building, scene building, events, and more encouragement for original artists in all genres, including theater and dance and literature and art and music to work together and do events where it's multimedia and promote each other and buy each other's albums, go to each other's shows, uh, put all your friends who are fellow artists on the guest lists because it's better to play to a full house than a than an empty house, and the people who are paying cover coming in, it'll be the same 20 people will come to the show, and then just you'll have more seats and everyone will have a better time. Anyway, so that's what I would say to make Sudbury even greater. Keep doing more shows, write more songs, and put your friends on the guest list.
So Saturday, October 4th, 2025, you'll be playing Knox Hall on Larch Street in Sudbury. Is that correct? From 7 to 10?
Yes, from 7 to 10 on Saturday the 4th, and yeah, that's with Will Gillespie and Brian Tremblay, two Northern troubadours, songs and stories of Northern Ontario. That's like the so like just telling the title, that's half the show. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Uh, yeah. Well, this was a lot of fun. It was nice chatting with you.
Sudbury Interviews, everyone. Today we were speaking with Will Gillespie, and what a pleasure! It's so calming to talk to you. I recognized your voice immediately when we when we got on the call. So, thanks for coming on, Will. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I'm really looking forward to being back in Sudbury. Every time I go there, I feel like Dracula regaining, his powers from the soil of his homeland. So thank you, Sudbury, for having me for all those years, and every time I get to come back. Yeah, it's very rejuvenating. They say there's something in the water, and it might literally be minerals. Anyway,
Nice.
so yeah, there's one theory that the crater city of Sudbury, that may have even been where like oxygen on Earth possibly started. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's just like
Huh.
it's yeah, it's a real magnetic place, and I'm always glad to come back and hope to see you there.
Sounds good, Will. Have a great day, and thanks again.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.